All right, welcome to today's explainer. We're doing something a little different this time, kind of stepping away from the familiar and venturing right into the shadows of a grim, dark fable. Picture this. We're sitting around a dying campfire, but the storytellers aren't human. No, our narrators today are these unseen forces of the cosmos, entities known as the Small and the Hunger, and they're here to share a parable called The Architect of the Moving Foundation. Now, a heads up, this isn't your typical story of knights and castles. It's a warning. If you're comfortable, if you like the world exactly the way it is, well, consider this your final chance to turn back. Because, as our narrators tell us, by the end of this explainer, we are going to completely abandon the safety of the shore.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We open at the very base of the Spire of Total Chaos, and right away we're hit with this eerie, guttural dread of just completely losing control. Listen to the chilling words of the Hunger. We eat the concept of up and down. I mean, when was the last time you felt the very ground beneath you just refuse to stay still? The Hunger doesn't just want to destroy the building, it wants to consume the very logic that holds it all together. It wants to eat your certainty. That safety of the shore we just talked about, it's a total delusion here. Entering the Spire means surrendering to a world where the rules of physics, logic, and navigation are literally on the menu. Now, to really wrap our heads around what's happening here, we've got to look at the foundations. In the old world, the jagged spire represented static control. Think of it like ancient, dusty stone. It was rigid, it was predictable, and it was meant to last forever, kind of like a solid, unlit candle. But under the influence of an era called High Time, that stone has entirely transformed into a moving foundation. Imagine that exact same candle, but now it's lit. The wax is melting, dripping, and pooling into this crazy liquid geometry. The flame of rigid logic is dying, and as it sputters out, the solid walls of reality are just melting away into something completely unanchored. So standing right in front of this melting spire are the three spirit siblings, and they're joined by a totally chaotic catalyst, the spark of evolution. He acts as the unbinding agent, basically the living embodiment of unpredictable whim. Picture him standing there in this vibrant, flickering red and blue Joker's motley. Set against the backdrop of the dying flame of rigid logic, his bright, chaotic colors sharply contrast with the gray, dusty world that's just melting away around him. Make no mistake, he isn't here to save the old world. He is here to dance on its ashes and laugh as the whole thing liquefies. And this spark, he turns to the three spirit siblings, his voice sounding like a rattle of bells, and delivers this absolutely incredible thought. Look at this spire. It gives the wind a more beautiful shape as the roof is torn away. I love this because he's framing the destruction of the old world not as some massive tragedy, but as a grand comedy. The high sorcerers of the past, they thought a tower had to stand perfectly still to be a tower. But the Spark and his siblings, they realize they inhabit the exact point on a circular timeline where total control and total chaos meet. They aren't trying to rebuild the roof, They're marveling at how the wind flows through the ruins.
Now, what I find absolutely fascinating here is how these forces actually unbind the rigid reality of the Spire's gilded cages. The moment they step inside, the logic of the crucible takes over. The wit unleashes this jagged laughter that literally slices through reality. The Hunger, like we learned earlier, consumes the very expectation that you can walk from point A to point B in a straight line. And the Spark acts as the ultimate unbinding agent, touching walls that suddenly expand and contract entirely on whim. They are acting as artist-philosophers, actively unraveling the logic of the old world, stroke by stroke.
As the walls literally shift and breathe around them, the emotional weight of the story really starts to transition. Remember that initial dread we felt outside the spire? Well, it begins to morph into this creeping excitement. Inside the spire becomes a surreal playhouse. It acts as a new horizon of chaos, proving this radical thesis. Absolute security is only found by completely embracing constant liquid movement. By actively choosing chaos over order, the siblings are no longer prisoners of a static tower. They're completely free to ride the wave of a melting reality. Meanwhile, as the spire melts, the scene shifts over to the town's marketplace, and here our other narrator, the Small, whispers this eerie observation. The architect has arrived, casting a silhouette of liquid midnight over those clinging to fading light. This is the architect of the Inkblot, the great star of High Time. He manifests with this fractured halo of clock faces, and his presence casts this unnatural, iridescent glow over the weary souls in the marketplace who are just desperately trying to cling to the dying flame of their rigid, scheduled lives. Okay, let's zoom out a bit and see how this builds across a circular timeline of history. The old era was entirely defined by scheduled suns, where people lived in strict order and honestly rigid fear. Then comes the midnight hour. With a mockingly rhythmic click of his clock face halo, the architect drops a single massive blot of chaotic liquid midnight right onto the center of the square. It hits the wet parchment of history, initiating a total collapse of the old rules. But here's the catch. This blot doesn't just destroy, it rewrites. And this leads to the new dawn, where from the ultimate stain of collapse, a dancing star emerges.
Really leaning into that dark graphic novel aesthetic of our fable, we hit this profound exchange in Act 3. The wit exposes the deeper mechanics of this chaotic rebirth to the spark. The wit tells him, to hunger is to clear the bored spark. We consume so the blot can rewrite history. See, the wit reveals that the hunger isn't just mindlessly eating linear paths. Not at all. The hunger is a necessary void. It has to consume the old world's linear logic to create a blank, wet canvas. The rigid lines have to be devoured so that the architect's massive ink plot actually has room to spread out and rewrite the timeline.
And then, the spark, who is just this ultimate chaotic optimist, completes the thought. And in that empty space, even the small can spark a dancing star out of smoky, iridescent starlight. It's such a beautiful piece of dialogue because it shows us the synergy of our narrators. The hunger clears the board. And right in that terrifying emptiness, the unseen, overlooked forces of the small, birth a volatile, brilliant entity from the ultimate stain. They are literally the co-authors of the mess, transforming destruction directly into creation.
So this brings about a truly brilliant emotional shift down in the marketplace. Under the glow of this smoky dancing star, everything changes. The frozen populace, who used to just be merchants weighing gold, living in rigid fear and strict economic reality, are totally transformed. Their scales are suddenly forced to weigh forgotten dreams instead. The terror of losing their scheduled suns fractures, giving way to joyful wisdom. It is a profound, joyful, creative liberation. They're like a people waking up from a long nightmare of order, suddenly remembering exactly how to laugh as the impossible becomes real.
Guys, the momentum here reaches this absolute manic, triumphant crescendo. The high time resonance just echoes across the entire realm. The melting spire and the wet parchment of the marketplace merge completely. The dancing star shines out as the ultimate affirmation of amor fati, the love of one's fate, no matter how chaotic it gets. Physical boundaries dissolve into these shifting margins. The siblings' living ink and the architect's starlight begin moving mountains and drying rivers completely at whim. Those old maps of the kingdom, they aren't just inaccurate now. They are gloriously, wonderfully useless.
All right, let's just pause for a second. Let all that manic energy kind of settle. Because I really want you to ask yourself a question and truly feel the atmosphere of it. What happens when the flame dies? We talked earlier about the old world being a solid candle and high time melting it down. But what happens when the flame of rigid logic, of control, of the safety of the shore finally sputters out entirely? This dark fable suggests that the darkness left behind isn't empty. Not at all. It's liquid. It's alive. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's simple, but incredibly powerful. Stasis itself was the true anomaly. The High Sorcerer's architecture of stasis, the rigid rules, the straight lines, those gilded cages we talked about, that was the unnatural state of the world all along. The beautifully ruined landscape, the moving foundation, the liquid chaos, that is the ultimate joyful reality. By letting the flame of order die, the world didn't end. It was finally set free to be as messy and magnificent as it was always meant to be. And that brings us to the end of our explainer today. The siblings and the spark, they're standing there as the brand new sovereigns of the realm. And they leave us with this haunting, triumphant thought. We no longer frame the spill. We are the frame. Every line in history is born from the very ink we bleed. They have truly become one with the moving foundation. So as we leave this campfire fable behind us, I really have to ask you, are you ready to embrace the liquid geometry of your own life? Or are you still trapped, clinging to your own architecture of stasis? Let that sink in for a bit and keep questioning the foundations around you.